Marathon's hype train has come to a screeching halt immediately following Bungie's big gameplay reveal stream. Community interactions, at least the ones we can measure, seem to be overwhelmingly negative towards Bungie, towards the game, and even the extraction shooter genre itself. As a smaller channel covering the game, and as someone who loves shooter games of all types, has more than 1,500 hours in the Destiny franchise, and someone who tends to ignore the noise on the internet, I really didn't expect to see so much negative feedback on my videos, but I guess I was just being a little naive. My question is it justified? Do people have legitimate concerns about the game that should be addressed, or is it just the internet doing its thing? Let's go. Well, as someone who's excited to play the game, I'd love to just dismiss the internet's negativity and continue on about my day. But I do think there's some value in constructive criticism, so let's go through the biggest complaints the community has so far and see if we can understand why those complaints are being made. Number 1, the monetization model. People are upset that a game in the extraction shooter space is charging an initial $40, especially since it has the potential for microtransactions in the future, and many games in that space are completely free to play. Now, to be fair, Bungie hasn't released an official price point for the game. This is just a rumored price point at this time. Unfortunately for Bungie, their planned price point leaked before the game was fully revealed to the player base, and the reveal showcase didn't show enough about the game's planned longevity to live up to that price. This is definitely a problem. However, that problem can be solved in time, particularly if the game actually warrants the price tag. I think some people will come around on the price of the game after getting some hands-on experience during the alpha and beta phases. Bungie can also do a lot to help this frustration dissipate, such as communicate their intentions more clearly. With a community who now feels the game isn't worth what you want to sell it for, it's now your job to convince them it is. The next complaint is that there's not enough meat on the bone. Bungie went big for the gameplay reveal. They spent a lot of resources planning the event with lots of pre-show hype. I think everyone was curious and excited to see what they had in store, but then they showed some very limited gameplay and chose not to talk about some of the coolest parts of the game. Although I appreciated seeing the gameplay for the first time, I thought the gameplay was a little generic. We didn't get to see any of the things that differentiate this game from other shooters, and particularly other extraction shooters. My initial reaction was that this looks like a standard extraction shooter, but made by the creators of Destiny. It really didn't highlight the game's true identity. Fortunately, Bungie can still recover from this. If I was them, I'd do a scaled down version of this show when talking about the beta and reveal some things that make this unique, assuming those things actually exist. The scaled down part of this is important. I think a contributing factor to all of this was the hype. When you have something that has insane hype, you have no control over people's expectations. And then you're revealing something that maybe doesn't live up to that, and that's the equation for disappointment. So to me, it's not really surprising that people got disappointed because the hype was so high, and that's partly Bungie's fault. For the next reveal and the next phase of this game development, I would suggest something that's much more low-key and a little bit more revealing. And finally, there's no PvE mode. Many people expressed disappointment after learning that the game would not feature a PvE-only mode. There is extraction, and that's it. I think this complaint stems from the casual parts of the Destiny 2 and Halo communities. Destiny 2 has one of the greatest PvE shooter experiences ever in my opinion, and so the players that love that game or have spent a lot of time in that game have a certain idea in their mind as to what a Bungie shooter game is. And Marathon is not that, and it was never intended to be that. It's an extraction shooter, and extraction shooters are ruthless. They are unapologetically difficult, and losses are much more frequent than wins, and that's the game type's DNA. It's what makes you come back for more, as long as you don't mind that pain. Extraction shooters took the battle royale genre and ramped up the risk. They are get out with everything or die with nothing, and that type of gameplay is certainly not for everyone. And this brings me to the main problem I personally see with the game. Bungie may be creating a game for no one. Extraction shooter players are attracted to that risk. The one time they get out with insane loot will keep them playing through the 10 times that they lose everything. These players appreciate the difficulty, but there are far less of those people in the world than people who just like to go into a game and have fun. Bungie knows this, and it's the reason no AAA studios have attempted anything in the extraction shooter space. So when they decided to make an extraction shooter, they obviously had to attempt to solve a problem. And that problem is, how do you create more extraction shooter fans and still make an extraction shooter game? Their answer is a game that's less difficult, with an aesthetic that's less serious. But to stay true to the genre, they can't take away the die and lose everything part, because it's literally the entire foundation of the game mode. Which means casual players who don't like that mechanic are going to be turned off. But at the same time, they're removing some of the difficulty that extraction shooter fans find so attractive. So, who is left? Now, obviously, we still don't know much about the game as a whole. The gameplay we saw was very limited, and even with the dev interviews, we didn't get a lot of information. Everything we saw was pretty generic, and I think that's exactly the problem. It was the perfect storm for negativity. You had insane hype, plus generic gameplay reveal, plus a less difficult extraction shooter, equals the internet blows up. Extraction shooter fans are disappointed with it feeling watered down, and casual shooter fans are disappointed because it doesn't have PvE only. It's a weird space for the game to live in, and to be honest, it's exactly where Bungie is trying to position it. They obviously believe that there is room in the market for a AAA extraction shooter game that can hook a casual player by being less serious, less realistic, less confusing, and ultimately less difficult. I actually do believe this can work, but it's going to be predicated on the story elements, the faction progression, and the player discovered secrets of the game. The reason I think it'll work is because those are exactly the things that Bungie has proven time and time again that they are so good at. It's my favorite thing about their games, and I don't think I'm alone. Obviously, time will tell, but it's up to Bungie to communicate the intent behind the game and provide the community with not only the planned cost for the game and the planned monetization going forward, but the reason why they believe it's worth that and the reason why players of all types will enjoy the game. Until then, I think they're in for some good old-fashioned internet hate. Alright, I'm curious what you think of the negativity. Do you feel it's warranted or just a lot of people making a lot of noise? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Trigger out.